Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Waiting to rise again.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Locking down the middle of the day. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Hour 2, Friday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, presented by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Hope your work week is winding down. We're working towards the weekend. It'll be a wet one tomorrow in the capital city, but it's time off, and hopefully you haven't had that long of a work week because you were off the first 2 days. But we weren't, but hopefully you were off the first 2 days, and we'll get you to the finish line either way. Let's talk some LSU football here to kick off our final hour of the week. Yesterday, report service, the advocate, Wilson Alexander, had it first, and I was able to corroborate it as well, that Kyle Williams has been targeted and will indeed become LSU's defensive backs coach. Probably not. Defensive tackles coach here in the next couple of days. LSU starts spring practice tomorrow. You know Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams played his high school football at Ruston High. He was at LSU from 2002 to 2005. He was a two-time All-SEC player. He was a first-team All-American. He was a national champion, and then was drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the 5th round of the 2006 draft. And he played his entire 13-year career with the Buffalo Bills. He was one of the best defensive tackles in football. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler. He was once a second-team All-Pro. There is no doubting his credentials as a player. He was great in high school. He was great in college. He was great in the NFL for a long time. And he decided after he finished his career in 2018, take a couple of years, and then he went back home to Ruston, and he coached the Ruston Bearcats as their defensive coordinator, and we know won a state championship this past year. And I think Bo Davis caught LSU by surprise, not when we found out about it, LSU knew, but when Bo Davis made this decision to go coach the Saints, I think that caught LSU a little bit by surprise. I think when Brian Kelly hired Bo Davis, he thought he had his defensive line coach for at least a handful of years. And so for that to go as quickly as it did in 1 year, I think probably caught LSU by surprise. And I'm not suggesting that Brian Kelly stood there and said, oh my God, what in the world will I do now? He's had enough assistants move on where he knows what that process looks like. But I'm feeling like it's likely that when Brian Kelly heard that, he went, I didn't know I was going to have to do this again. And there were some names reported. Al Davis from Missouri, Joyner at Ole Miss, who's done a great job with their defensive line. There have been names bantied about, but Williams interviewed on Wednesday, and then the report surfaced on Thursday. That's the direction LSU was going. Now, it is reasonable in looking at this hire to suggest, man, LSU, who's just gotten through paying their defensive line coach $1 million and is thought of as one of the top 10 programs in the sport, is hiring a guy who's never coached college football to be the defensive line coach? Like, really? And that is a reasonable thing to say. College football coaching, whether you're a coordinator or position coach, is a grind. It's demanding. It's intense. It's lucrative. And for LSU to hire somebody that's never done it before is telling. It's like, wow, that's a risk. And it is certainly a risk, because you're a great player doesn't make you a great coach. But I think that Kyle Williams has some real positives that will hopefully, if you're an LSU fan, outweigh the negative of zero in the experience department. One, he's not calling plays. He's teaching the technical aspects of the game. And you know he's perfectly versed in that. You cannot play 13 years in the NFL as a first-round pick or a fifth-round pick like Kyle Williams if you don't know exactly what the heck you're doing. So he's got that experience. He's from the state of Louisiana. Grew up in Ruston, played at LSU. He'll understand how to sell himself and the program to people in the state of Louisiana. And I think the fact that he has coached high school students for really 4 years gives you a real indication that he knows how to relate to 17 and 18-year-old kids that you're recruiting. And that's a big part of it. Now, learning the ins and outs of how to sell the program and how to close deals and make sure that you've got guys that are filling the pipeline is a little bit different than just talking to the kids who are in your district and go to school with you, coaching them up. But it is still relating to people that are in a different generation than you. And Kyle Williams has done that. So you understand that there are a lot of pros to what Kyle Williams brings to the table. And the idea that someone who was fairly fresh off the field would go into coaching is certainly not foreign. Like, you start to look at the NBA, guys are coming right off the bench, right into coaching roles. Look at the Saints' new head coach. He left the Cowboys quarterback room as the backup and then became the coach. He went from taking reps behind Dak Prescott to calling his plays like that. Literally, that quick. So this is kind of the way things are. I think we went from like an age in the 50s and 60s where you had player coaches to like that was really a foreign thing and coaches were a lot older to like now it's everything feels like a young man's game. And Kyle Williams is 41 years old. So I don't know Kyle Williams. I'd never gone into a meeting room with defensive tackles. I don't know the ins and outs of defensive tackle play. I don't know how well he communicates them. Like, I can't sit here and pretend to know a lot of the intricate details. I can weigh this from the outside and suggest it is absolutely a risk for LSU. He absolutely has some credentials. And I can add to this conversation that I've been told, as someone who would know, that Kyle Williams has been approached by multiple NFL franchises to come coach their defensive line. Multiple. Not one, multiple. And Kyle Williams was happy in Ruston. When you play 13 years in the NFL, you don't really have to chase the next salary. You can kind of do whatever the heck you want to do. And I think he liked living in Ruston, coaching the Ruston Bearcats, and playing a lot of golf at Squire Creek, which is awesome, by the way. That's what I think he probably did. And if you're not aware, you're going, Kyle Williams playing golf, he's like 300 pounds. Yeah, and he's awesome. He's a great player, like really good. But that's a comfortable life for a 13-year NFL vet. And when you're at Ruston, you can take some time off. You can kind of do things at your speed. When you get into the NFL or even more so college football, like life changes a lot. And to make that happen for Kyle Williams, it'd have to be a pretty special opportunity. And I don't know which NFL teams approached him, but I know which college team approached him, and I know where he played his college football. Get me? And I'll tell you this. This is Hunt Palmer speaking, not Kyle Williams speaking. If I made as much money as Kyle Williams did in the NFL, and I worked that hard for that long in the NFL, and I could play golf at Squire Creek and not do a damn thing else, that's what I would do. But I certainly wouldn't dive into this era of college football. But feels like he's committed to doing it. And his work ethic is absolutely beyond reproach. So he's going to have to dive in now and make a lot of phone calls on Tuesday nights until 10 o'clock at night and go on a lot of visits to houses all around the country to 17-year-olds. Get to know their moms and dads. And grind, trying to make sure that kids don't leave his program for more money elsewhere or want to jump in the transfer portal because they're not comfortable with their spot on the depth chart. And it's a lot. So there are a lot of moving parts to this entire discussion. But to me, I'm good with the hire. I think it's a good hire. It is not without risk. I think Bo Davis is pretty much without risk. There was very little chance that Bo Davis is going to come in here and not know what the heck to do. And there is more of that risk with Kyle Williams because he's never done it. And anyone who's doing something for the first time is going to have a learning curve. But I feel like you've got enough accolades, enough behind his name, and that high school coaching experience, which I think does matter, especially on the recruiting front, and understanding that he's not calling plays against elite defensive coordinators in the SEC. He's coaching guys how to strike, engage, shed blocks, make plays. He's been doing that for 20 years. So I think it's a good hire. I think it's with risk, but I feel comfortable saying that LSU's got a guy that knows what he's doing in that position. That's my thoughts on Kyle Williams. If you're looking for LSU football content all year round, I can tell you where to find it. Hunt on LSU was our YouTube channel. YouTube channel's done great. Appreciate y'all for subscribing up to that and liking. You can also find it wherever you find your podcast. Just search Hunt on LSU. You'll get LSU football content all year round. Let's take a time out. When we come back, what are we talking about when we come back? I haven't looked. Saints, free agency, one of their own. They have the money for it. We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website. Jonathan Carbo and his team, it's just a fantastic group. I sat in their conference room for like an hour and a half a couple of weeks ago and just talked to their team. And y'all understand that I worked in the insurance business for 7 years, and I can promise you, if you trust the Highland Insurance Group to handle your commercial insurance, you're in really, really good hands. We talked the ins and outs of it, and it's not something that I would highly recommend you go and do for an hour and a half, but understand that insurance is very, very important. And they know what they're doing, and they're helping clients daily make sure that your program responds properly, is structured the right way to, one, make sure that you're covered in the event of a bad situation, and two, make sure that you're in the right hands from a carrier perspective so that your premium is in line with what your insurance is trying to do. If you want to call the Highland Insurance Group and say, hey, I just got my renewal, renewal comes up in 3 days, and I need you to cut 10, 12% off this, just don't bother. That's not the reason you would call the Highland Insurance Group. Call them right now and just say, hey, I'd like you to audit my insurance policies and see what this looks like. They'll come back, and if it's really good, they'll say, yeah, you're in the right spot. If they find significant issues, they'll fix them. That's why they write as much business as they do. Jonathan Carbo and his team at the Highland Insurance Group. Check them out online at HighlandIG.com. That's HighlandIG.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Hope your Friday's going well. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Let's talk a little bit of Saints here on this Friday. Getting into free agency time. The NFL, as you know, never sleeps. You go straight from the Super Bowl, and then you get into Combine after coaching carousel season, I guess. And then you get into free agency, which leads right into the draft, which leads into mini camps and schedule selections. You know the drill at this point, but we're now into the free agents portion of this. And I was reading up on Paulson Adebo in a story that Matthew Paris wrote over for The Advocate. And he wrote in the piece that Adebo expects to have several suitors across the league, and it's unlikely he'll have to settle for a 1-year prove-it deal. And he would generally not be looking at a 1-year prove-it deal based on his age and his production, because Paulson Adebo has been a really good player for the New Orleans Saints. You're looking at a guy who came in as a third-round pick. He was the 76th pick in the 2021 draft, and he was really good in his first 3 full seasons with New Orleans. He played in every game, started every game as a rookie at 22 years old. He played in 13 games, started 12 in 2022. In 2023, he played in 15 games and started all of them, and was a piece to a really strong defensive secondary under Dennis Allen with Marshawn Lattimore on the other side. And you had C.D. Deuce in there at times, and like there were other pieces, but like Paulson Adebo was really good for 4 years. And then in the middle of his 4th season, he has that horrific looking injury. And at that point, you kind of look and you go, man, like what are teams and their medical staffs going to think of Paulson Adebo? And you understand the salary cap situation the Saints are in, which is strapped a little bit. And if you're looking at a guy that's 25 years old that plays a premium position, and corner at this era of the NFL is a premium position, like that's a guy who's going to command a healthy sum of money, unless teams are unwilling to give him that big chunk of change because they haven't seen him post-injury. And the injury didn't look good. So it was reasonable for us analyzing the Saints. It seems inhumane and insensitive, but for us to analyze the Saints going, that injury may price him down to a re-sign with the Saints. Like, that's something that you could see, and it would be like that 1 year prove it deal. But Matthew Paris writes that's not what he anticipates is going to happen. Paris continues writing, a source with knowledge of the situation said the Saints haven't closed the door on Adebo, but Adebo is pursuing a deal that would make him one of the league's 10 highest paid corners, a price tag that might put New Orleans out of the hunt. I will say this. If Marshawn Lattimore becomes the 8th highest paid corner in the NFL, it will not be with the New Orleans Saints. I just don't think they can swim in that water right now. I'm well aware that the Saints tend to make almost everything work from a salary cap perspective, but this is something that I just can't envision, especially when you consider the fact they traded up for Kool-Aid McKinstry. You've got Alontae Taylor. They're thin there, but they've got high draft picks and young players invested in that position. And I think they're probably going to ride with that and pass on Adebo. It's just kind of what it feels like. Now, what Adebo expects or demands could be different from what the market dictates. But here's my guess. My guess is Chicago gets involved pretty quickly. That's because Chicago has a lot of money and Dennis Allen is there. Now, caveat. Maybe Paulson Adebo is among that number that was not thrilled with the Dennis Allen era in New Orleans. I don't know. I can't pretend to know. I know there were some players that were disgruntled near the end. Whether Paulson Adebo was one of those or not, I don't know. But Dennis Allen has had a good track record of developing corners. Chicago's got money if they want to pay him. They've fortified their offensive line this week, and they're looking to add elsewhere, and they've got a lot of money left over. And they may jump in there. But if there's a market in a bidding war, that's going to price the Saints out. And this, as much as anything, should reinforce to New Orleans the position that they're in and how non-advantageous it is, detrimental that it is to their pursuit of building a roster. When you have to look at a guy that you drafted, that you've helped develop, that you believe to be a good player, and you simply cannot get into the mix to pay him at a position where you're that thin, there's a big problem. And it should just be in big flashing red lights. You've got to do something different. There are plenty of teams that are $70 million under the salary cap, which means they're $100 million to the good on where you are. And your team just went what it did record-wise. And so this starts as a Paulson Adebo conversation, as a roster composition conversation, as a conversation that's going, is this a guy that you'd like to keep? Probably. Is this a guy that you can keep? No. Why? Because your salary cap situation stinks. And I keep hearing this rhetoric from those speaking with people inside the Saints organization that are talking about the next month of Saints roster building, that are talking about the Saints going out and spending money. And while they can't dump lump sum on one guy, spending really any significant money is just going to keep you in this spot. And it just seems so crystal clear to all of us who are sitting out here on the outside, whether it's you, the fan, who's listening to me or reading newspapers, reading whatever you are there, like anybody from the outside, it's like, this is obvious. You can't pay the players that you'd like to pay. Change it. And Adebo, to me, presents that. And you may have had, well, I certainly did, the fleeting hope that he would fall back in your lap after that injury. And you hope that he's a full go. And he may still, because the market may not pay him. I just suggest it probably will. And if he can go work out with somebody and demonstrate that he's up and running, which Luke Johnson told us yesterday that he's heard that he is, then that's going to be the end of the Paulson Adebo era in New Orleans. And then you have now, over the last, I guess it's March now, so 5 months, you've moved on from your top two corners, Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo. And by the way, trading Lattimore was a great idea. You recouped a draft pick. Don't have that luxury with Adebo. But that was a position of strength for you 3, 2, 1 year ago. Now it's a position where you're low on depth, and you're going to have to probably use a draft pick on it or potentially dip into the free agent market and get someone theoretically of lesser value than Adebo. So you get worse. See where I'm going with that? Like, it's pretty easy to connect those dots. And that's something that should be so obvious to the Saints when a 25-year-old free agent looks at you and you go, yeah, I got nothing for you. So we'll see. Oftentimes, players test the market and find out that the market doesn't view them in the same way that them and their agent do. But it feels like, based on the reporting that Matthew Parrish is doing, the people that Luke Johnson has talked to, what I'm reading, that the Paulson Adebo era is probably done in New Orleans. So you look at Kool-Aid McKinstry, you say, grow up, kid. Look at Alontae Taylor, say, you got to step it up, kid. And then you probably have to supplement that with whatever you can, however you can, for less expensive. This was something I didn't really know about until this week, what Adebo's status was, but it sounds like he's 1, healthy, 2, very motivated financially, and that means that New Orleans is going to have to sit on the sideline. So if you're looking for more Saints content, you can find it from us at Hunt on Saints. That's Hunt on Saints. You can find us wherever you find your podcast, and of course on YouTube as well. Really, really appreciate y'all for subscribing up to that Hunt on Saints YouTube channel. Our things are going fantastically over there, and we really appreciate it. It's all Saints all year long, so if that's your thing, check it out, Hunt on Saints. Doug Thompson going to be on the call this weekend for LSU and North Alabama. Sometimes I have to even think about who LSU is playing in some of these.
Who's the mascot for them?
The Lions.
Yeah.
Lions and Tigers and Bear Jones. I've already got a headline ready if Bear hits
Beautiful.
a couple homers this weekend. So we'll talk to Doug Thompson, former Tiger national champion and a member of the LSU Sports Radio Network, when we come back on The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Every single model in the Genesis of Baton Rouge line has gotten the IIHA Top Safety Picks. Some of them Top Safety Picks Plus. How about 3 years of complimentary maintenance? That's a great perk of driving a Genesis. How about 3 years of complimentary valet maintenance? That is a great perk of driving a Genesis. Just picture this. You've got to get an oil change, probably need a little wiper fluid as well, maybe a new air filter, all things that kind of take some time. You may have to drive to the service station, wherever, and kind of uproot your morning. You're not able to be where you need to be. Never the case with Genesis of Baton Rouge. You go to work, you call them, need some service done. Okay. They come to you, drop a car off. So if you do need to do something during the day, you've got a loaner. They drive your car right back to the dealership. They handle the maintenance. It's complimentary for 3 years. They drive it right back to you. How could you be any more convenient than that? The answer is that you couldn't. It's incredible, and it's part of being a Genesis of Baton Rouge driver. Genesis of Baton Rouge is the only fully exclusive Genesis dealer in the States. If you'd like to get behind the wheel of a Genesis, which you probably have not done because they're fairly new to the game, just put it on your list. Put Genesis of Baton Rouge on your list and get on by and see them. Tell one of their brand ambassadors, The Hunt Palmer Show, sent you. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge, and you can find them online at genesisofbatonrouge.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
All year long, but especially during Lent, brought to you by Corks Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Check out the menu, corksfishandshrimp.com. If you've got a birthday party coming up, if you want to feed the office or something like that, if you've got a retirement party coming up, anything that's gathering lots of folks. Maybe you're just watching an LSU baseball game. March Madness watch party. Corks is awesome at catering. They can always help you out on the catering side of things. They got those big trays of the crispy fried catfish, shoestring fries, huge trays of the jumbo Gulf shrimp as well. And they do this kind of stuff all the time. So if you're looking to do some catering and want to want to mix it up a little bit, Corks is always a fantastic option. Tell them you heard about it on the Hunt Palmer Show. They're on their government between Foster and Jefferson, certainly online at corksfishandshrimp.com. They bring you our Friday shows each and every week, and we certainly do appreciate that. LSU in North Alabama this weekend. I've talked about it a lot, but I just want to kind of continue because we're looking to hook up with Doug Thompson. There's some things that I want to talk to him about as well. But you're not going to see Gavin Guidry this weekend. But I do think you're going to see Maverick Rizzi jump back on the bump and get another chance. His last outing was not his best, and it's a guy that Jay Johnson thought that would potentially lead LSU in appearances. So I think that they're going to try to get him back on the horse at some point this weekend. We'll see if there's a high leverage spot or not, but I think they're going to try to get him involved, and he's got all the tools. He just needs a little bit more mound time, I think. Speaking of mound time, Doug Thompson has spent some times on the mound, also on the radio headset there for the LSU Sports Radio Network. He joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Doug, how are you?
Great, Hunter. How are you doing this afternoon, buddy?
I'm doing quite well. How do we get Cade Anderson over the hump there in the sixth inning? What's the secret there?
Well, I think part of it is being efficient, right? Like with his pitch count. Like I think, what was he up to, 90-something pitches in the sixth inning?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think to get past the sixth, I mean, you're going to have to go into the sixth with somewhere around 70, 75 pitches, to get into the seventh inning. So, but that's kind of a double-edged sword. Like those guys that strike out a lot of people, sometimes their pitch count gets elevated because of that. So, I think that's the main thing, though, to try to get through those early innings with as few pitches as possible. That helps you get deeper in the game.
For sure. And look, there's a lot of examples of great aces at LSU that have worked really, really deep into games, and we could go through the list here, but the point being that there have been a number of them. I don't know if I've seen an LSU staff that had quite this much depth, especially if you go into the bullpen and add Ware and Schmidt into the bullpen on the weekends at some point. How important do you think it is for Cade Anderson to be able to go into the seventh, into the eighth inning, or do you think if they can just get 6 good ones from him, they'll be okay?
Well, I think the most important starter of the three in terms of getting a bunch of innings is that Friday night guy. The more innings you can get Friday night, the more you have for everyone else the rest of the weekend, right? So to me, I think it's a big deal that he can get as deep as possible. Now, does he have to get 7 every Friday night? No, because of all the depth. But if your starter on Friday night can get you into the 8th inning or throw a CG, I mean, dude, things are really looking good for the rest of the weekend.
No question about that. The Saturday guys, Anthony Ianson has been the first 3 weeks, and we expect to see that again on tomorrow. What have you made of his early season? It's kind of gotten mixed reviews. The numbers are pretty good, but there's been some hard contact.
Well, there's been a couple innings, right? Like it's just if you take 2 or 3 innings out of his stat line, he's really, really good. But and that tends to happen, I mean, he seems to always have that one shaky inning, and that's some guys' MO. Like great starters are the ones that they're going to be consistent, and you know what you're going to get. And sometimes that even means that that they're going to struggle early, but that they're going to do what we saw him do last week, where he gave up, I think it was 3 runs in the first inning, but he pitched through the 6th. So to me, that's a sign of a quality starter that can stay locked in and battle through some adversity and stay in the game, right? That's a huge deal for a starting pitcher.
So are catchers, and we know that LSU has struggled to keep the ball in front a little bit through 3 weeks. What have you seen from that, and how much improvement do you think is realistic as we move into SEC play?
Well, I think those 2 guys would be a great 2-headed monster if they could start swinging a little bit. And as with regard to their catching, I've never really seen a team start off the season 6 games with 50 strikeouts and less than 5 walks. In the last 5 games, I want to say we had 32 walks and even 6 or 7 hit by pitches. So I don't know. I was talking to Alex Milazzo. He said catching might have something to do with that. But it's been very strange over the past 5 or 6 games, at least to me it has, that it's not just one guy that's kind of lost the field. It seems like the entire pitching staff isn't quite as or they're not quite smothering the zone as they were at the beginning of the year.
Does it matter to pitchers who's back there catching?
Man, that's a great question. I think some pitchers have guys that they prefer throwing to. I was never really a guy that cared too much who was pitching. But yes, absolutely. To some pitchers, at 100%, they have a preferred guy.
Let's talk offense a little bit. I'm not worried about Derek Curiel. I think he's going to be great. I'm not worried about Jared Jones. I know he's going to be great. Milam as well. I'm curious about Dickinson, and I'm just using it as a frame. He's just never stepped up in class into the SEC. I knew he would get off to a good start because he bashed at Utah Valley. If they get this guy in SEC play, I think it transforms the entire team. How do you feel about Dickinson and how he'll translate into the SEC when we get there?
I'm with you. I'm reserved on it. I've watched him be a dude early on. He's leading the team in RBIs. He's leading the team in home runs. And I'm with you 1,000%. If that translates the way it is right now to SEC play, things are looking good. Things are looking real good for LSU this year. But if the pitching ends up being a little tough for him, then I'm with you. Who would be that next guy to sit in the middle of the lineup and help Jared Jones with a little protection?
Jay's going with freshman Kason Evans at the end of games now. How do you feel about that?
He's electric, man. Like, he is really, really good. He's a lot to deal with. That fastball is a real 95, 96. He seems to be, he doesn't seem to be a freshman in those moments. Like, he seems to be completely comfortable out there, and I really like him in that role.
As far as the players go, I kind of call this the dog days here for the fans who were so excited when things started, and now that newness is worn off, and we haven't gotten SEC play yet. How's it for the players right now who are a week away from SEC play, and you got to deal with a school that most of them probably never heard of this weekend?
Yeah, well, this is the weekend before, and you start to kind of feel that excitement throughout the course of this weekend, knowing it gets real next week. And I think you'll see the same thing from the fans. Although I will say, you've been to a couple games outside of the midweek games this week on Mardi Gras Day.
Yeah,
man, I've been pretty pleased with the crowds. Like night one or day one at 2:00, much bigger crowds than I thought, and it seems like there's been more people actually in the stadium this year in this first 12 games than last year, perhaps. So, but I think this is that weekend. I remember as a player being really excited on this weekend, knowing that it's about to get real next week.
Last one here. Now, how do you feel about him at this point through 3 weeks with 1 week to go before SEC play?
I like them. I think they need to gel a little bit as a team. I think there's a couple positions that need to be shored up. Somebody needs to step up and take that catching spot. Somebody needs to step up and take the third base spot. And I feel like there's an outfield spot still available for someone. So there's a few things that are undecided, but I think that's totally normal at this point of the year. And, man, I really like where we are. I mean, you said it early on, depth. The depth of this pitching staff is unusual. I mean, it's extremely extraordinary. So because of that, I'm pretty excited about this year.
I am too. We'll see you this weekend at the box, Doug. Thanks, man.
All right, buddy. Have a good one, Hunt. Thanks for having me.
You too. Doug Thompson, Tiger National Champion, member of the LSU Sports Radio Network. All-around great dude. Always enjoy seeing Duggar up there in the press box for LSU baseball. Next week, Monday and Tuesday, I'll kind of give you my synopsis of where I think LSU is as a team entering SEC play. Now, keep in mind, and I'll say this probably on Monday too, I was dead wrong last year. Dead wrong. Like, way off. I don't run from that. Like, I thought they looked really good in the non-conference, and they showed up in league play, and there were some instances that were out of their control, but some that were very much in their control, and they just weren't any good. And one of the things that was out of their control was the fact that they faced just electrifying arms in game threes. And one of the things that was in their control is they didn't have a third arm, and that cost them against Mississippi State, against Vanderbilt, against Florida, and then you got dusted in Knoxville and in Fayetteville. So, and you're not going to control the schedule either, and those are two of the best programs in the country. But I thought LSU was in really good shape at this point last year, and they weren't. But you had Holman and Jump step forward. You had Herring become a dude. And eventually Larson and Milam won some jobs and helped you get where you needed to be. And by the end of it, LSU was a top 10 team in the country. Now, that is good for absolutely nothing around here, but I think everyone around here knows what championship baseball looks like. I think everyone around here knows what bad baseball looks like. You saw bad baseball, and you got to championship level baseball. LSU is one of the best 10 teams in the country at the end of May last year. And they showed that in Hoover, and they damn near did it in Chapel Hill if Jump could get 3 outs. But because of the situation you put yourself in through 5 weeks of league play, you had to go play North Carolina instead of some ridiculous, at that point, Pac-12 team or something coming to you, and you would have beat them at the box. But that didn't happen. And it got there. It just took too long. And I've looked at LSU's schedule this year in league play, and it's reasonable. You've got a pretty comfy start, and you finish at South Carolina, who I don't think is very good. Now, you've got a stretch in there, 3 weeks, where you've got Tennessee, at A&M, and Arkansas, and that's going to be the toughest 3 weeks in there. But you've also got some weeks in the early part that are very doable. Missouri's one of them, and I think there are some others, and we'll get into the schedule next week. But I've talked around the point, but the point being, I'll give you where I think they are next week, given the fact that I was dead wrong last year. But this team looks deeper on the mound. They were not deep on the mound last year. You didn't have a third starter. You had one bullpen guy you could trust. Ackenhausen was in and out. Little was in and out. But then you had a bunch of Javen Colemans and Thatcher Hurds and things that were not consistent. This appears to me to be deeper. And I fully expect this group, because you've got, 11 guys right now that you feel like can pitch. I think that there will be some guys that get hit in league play, and you'll probably shrink that number down to 7. But last year you were at 3. So if you can get 7, 7's good. You can work with 7. And that's kind of where LSU needs to get as quickly as possible. Understand who those guys are and get them out on the mound. You may be able to get away with it against Missouri at home, but when you go to Austin, you need to be ready to play. And they've got 3 weeks to do that. You've got this coming week, 2 weeks. This week, pre-Missouri, and then the week after Missouri. You got 2 weeks with a week in there to get ready to do it. And that's what you'll all be gunning for, because LSU's done a good enough job, barring a disaster this weekend, of getting through the non-conference the way you need to get through the non-conference. You lose one to Omaha, who cares? You're in good shape. But then you got to be ready to take off when you start league play. Because if you can get off to a good start and get the math in your favor, you don't have to go nuts when you play that 3-weekend stretch that involves 3 of the best programs in the country. And A&M, yes, they're still good, trust me. Arkansas and then Tennessee. So that's where I am. We'll come back and close things out on a Friday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com is that website. Mitchell Fisher and his team, phenomenal to work with. How about this? If you deal with Wi-Fi issues in your home, meaning you sit in this room or you're in your bed there and you can't get the internet that you need, how about mesh Wi-Fi? You can boost your signal all over the house. You don't have to walk over towards the router to get your phone to stream properly. You got that one TV in the house that gives you problems. Maybe it's in the guest room, but you do have a guest and they can't watch TV because the smart function, the internet doesn't work quite right. Get mesh Wi-Fi and boost it all around your home. Mitchell Fisher and his team are happy to help you with that. It's not just audio, it's not just video, not just security. It's the whole package with your electronics in your home. Mitchell Fisher and his team at AVSS can handle that. Check them out on Instagram, AVSS_BR. Check them out online, avssla.com. Mitchell Fisher's cell phone number, the owner of the company's cell phone number. I'll put you in touch with him directly. 225-439-7920. 225-439-7920. Give him a call and just let him know what your issue is. He'll be happy to come over and give you all the assistance that he can. They're the People's Choice Award winner for the best vendor at the Parade of Homes. It's Audio Video Security Solutions online at avssla.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Join us at the Louisiana Outdoor Expo at the Lamar Dixon Expo Center from March 14th to the 16th next weekend. Head over to the front or back booth and register for your chance to win a U10 New Canoe, a compact, versatile kayak perfect for fishing and hunting adventures. Visit 1045ESPN.com for details. You can also catch the Pels right here on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge. They will face the Rockets on Saturday at 6 p.m. and then they'll return home to host the Grizzlies Sunday at 6 p.m. Pelicans coverage is brought to you locally by Industry Makes.
Shout out out to Corks, bringing you our Friday shows each and every week. Get on by, get you a shrimp po' boy today from the folks over at Corks. It's a Lenten Friday, and go see them. Government between Foster and Jefferson. All right, back. Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
Just take it.
Alrighty, first one here. Daylight savings. Take it or leave it.
Is this daylight savings that we're entering, or is that in December,
Well, whatever.
November?
It's happening on Sunday.
Spring forward, we take it.
Yes.
Spring forward rocks.
I'll take it.
Now, my wife contends that you lose an hour of sleep with spring forward.
You do.
You do not.
What do you mean?
Unless you have to get up early.
Okay, well, yeah, sure.
If you have to get up early, and if you have to get up at 7 and you would normally sleep to 8, yes, you do have to set your alarm an hour earlier. But if it's a normal Sunday morning and you're just waking up when you wake up, you just wake up and it is later, but you've slept the amount of time you would sleep.
Yeah.
And we don't go to 7 a.m. mass, so she's not going to lose an hour of sleep. She just likes to complain about the fact that she loses an hour of sleep. Doesn't happen.
No.
That's an old wives' tale.
Yeah, no, and this is a far even if you did lose an hour, it's worth it because now it's not going to be getting dark. It's 5 o'clock as it was for the last 6 months.
I do. At a certain point, kind of weaponize the darkness against Myers.
Oh, well, that is a thing.
That is you need to chill out and we got to go take a bath. It's dark outside.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem.
That's not going to be able to happen here moving forward.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to trade that off. We'll be okay. I like it staying daylight. We've talked about this before. When I used to be a much younger man and I didn't have a wife and kid, the extra daylight was phenomenal for golf.
Oh,
that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
So we'll just that's a lost perk. But I still just prefer it.
Yeah, I do too. All right, next one, cold showers. Take it or leave it.
I got to tell you, back.
Just leave it alone.
I didn't even say anything.
I knew you were going to leave it. I mean, who would take a cold shower?
I think some people take cold showers.
Well, I will say
to quote George on Seinfeld, they're for psychotics.
I will say that after a long day at the beach, that it can be nice to take a somewhat cold shower.
God, no. We had a little hot water issue in the Palmer house last night into this morning. We had to take a cold one this morning. It's just not good. It's bad. It's a lot of deep breathing.
Yeah.
A lot of that going on. Powering through. It's a tough scene. I was wide awake, but it was bad. I hated it, but I just got word as of 6 minutes ago, we're all good.
All right.
We like to hear that. That was bad.
Yeah, that's not good. Not good. All right, next one here. Shooting 80 at Bay Hill. Take it or leave it.
Oh, I'd take it. I'd love to shoot 80 at Bay Hill.
Yeah, but what if you're a professional golfer?
Then you're on my fantasy golf team. That's basically what would happen.
Pretty much.
Shout out Matt McNeely. I don't know how he's going to afford to get back home.
Yeah,
after
that might be a problem. He's really been scrounging for the making this tour.
He did a podcast the other day talking about how people chant "Daddy's money" at him at the events, which is loser activity.
That is pretty stupid.
For those who are completely unaware, Matt McNeely's dad is a massively successful tech entrepreneur worth billions of dollars, and so his missing the cut's not going to hurt too bad there at Bay Hill, but. Yeah,
it hurts
I had
you
in fantasy
at least.
golf, and that hurts me significantly.
Yeah, so
I'm atrocious.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many weeks in a row have you had?
He was in the top 10 at 4 p.m. yesterday.
He was.
He made a double in 18 and then shot 80s. He missed the cut. It's just awful.
Yeah. That's okay.
I'm not putting my team in position to win. I gotta get in the film room.
You gotta get better.
I gotta be better.
Yeah, you do for sure. I mean, nobody's no one's gonna go to Hunt Palmer for fantasy golf advice. That's just a fact at this point. I mean, there's no reason.
It is a fact.
There's no reason.
No one has ever done that.
No, and there's no reason to, because it's very clear from the results that you're not.
I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna win the next 6,
okay.
including Augusta.
Oh, that sounds good. All right, last one. Auburn will rout Alabama tomorrow. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave it. I heard Jimmy earlier on Live at Lunch. I think he's loading up on Auburn, thinks they exhaled for the game over there at Texas A&M. They're going to come back and hammer Alabama. I don't think so. I think Alabama's going to hang in there. I think they're going to make some shots. I think Auburn will win. But what's hammering them? I would say 13. I think it'll be less than 13.
Alabama's got so much firepower. Even if they get down by 20 at some point, they can just easily go on a 15-0 run or something and then cut. Even if they end up losing.
It would be tough to go on a 15-0 on Auburn.
It would be, but if anyone can do it, it's probably Alabama.
I saw a thing on the internet today that Chad Baker-Mazara, who's 25,
is going to come back. Yes,
might have another year left.
Yeah.
26-year-old wing. That's just ridiculous.
Hey, I mean, Hunt, there's plenty of people that are in college at 26.
I had gotten out by 26. That means
that was a miracle. Let's just be honest.
Look,
it wasn't
once
easy.
I got into journalism school, we got it done. When we were in business,
That's tough.
things were not good.
Tough scene.
The econ grades,
Ooh.
not great. Business calculus, awful.
Oh no, I can't
But
imagine.
Mass comm was okay.
You can't.
You don't have to imagine. It was a withdrawal, so a W,
Yeah.
an F, and then a C, which
Yeah,
is passing.
I mean, you struggle with basic math, so that's not
Business calculus,
not
derivatives
good.
and stuff, just completely worthless, one, and I sucked at it. So that's 2. That's it for today. We're done for the week. Appreciate Corks for bringing you our Friday shows. If you missed anything, catch it on demand. Matt's going to drive you home next one after further review. We are back on Monday, same time, same place. Have a safe weekend and a good one. We're back on Monday. Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.